Frisco, The Secret History, a podcast. Hi, this is Knox Bronson at the Secret History of Frisco podcast. We have a great episode today, a bonus episode. Right now, all episodes are free. In the future, bonus episodes will be behind a subscription tier on Patreon. But I'm doing free episodes of everything for a couple of months as we get going, so everybody can get an idea of what we're doing here. So today we're talking to Paul Drexler, a local writer and historian. He is the author of a book, Notorious San Francisco, True Tales of Crime, Passion, and Murder. And I will put a link to the book in the show notes. He also does walking tours of San Francisco, crime tours, and historic stuff. And I'll put a link to that, his website for that as well. So it was great talking to him. I was hoping we would kind of be able to go over sort of the overarching evolution of crime in San Francisco from pre-gold rush days up to about 1953 when Pat Brown kind of shut down the town. There's still crime, and there's still organized crime in San Francisco, but it's in a very different form now from what it used to be. And as you know, I hope, the focus of this podcast is the last couple of decades where San Francisco was still a wide open town. Anyway, with no further ado, let's talk to Paul.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
How are you doing?
Good. I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
I did a little introduction, but could you tell me about your book and anything else? To start with.
Oh, sure. I've been interested in crime since I was a child. Maybe because my Uncle Jack's car was stolen and used in a gangland murder. But it has always interested me. And when I came to San Francisco in 1978, I wrote an article for the Chronicle and Examiner about early crime in San Francisco. And through that article, I met and got to be good friends with Kevin Mullen, who was the retired assistant deputy chief of police, and who, after he retired, became quite a good crime historian. And anyway, I worked with him for a while. I've done tours for over 15 years. One of Chinatown, one of the Barbary Coast, where we walk and I talk about famous crimes that occurred there. I also have a book out called Notorious San Francisco, True Tales of Crime, Passion, and Murder. So that's what I would available on Amazon. Okay, I've done my plugs. Okay.
Well, I will put a link to your website, and it's you have a website for your tours and your book. Is it the same website?
I have different websites. The tours probably might have more material in it. I will figure that out later.
Okay, yeah, I'll put them in the show notes. So
yeah.
So anyway, as we've discussed, your book, you go all the way back to the gold rush days, as I recall.
Yeah.
And then you and I have discussed, the San Francisco in the 30s and 40s. I what I've seen in my research so far the past 6 months, it's been very intense, and although I've lived here all my life, is that San Francisco seems to be a uniquely strange city, especially in many ways, but especially crime or vice. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, sure. Well, it was a city that was founded in part by criminals. You have to understand that when the gold rush happened, this was news all over the world. And mostly young men came out to seek their fortune. But also criminals from various countries. For example, the Australians, known as the Sydney Ducks, which, Australia had been a prison colony. They came over and they had a section of the town which was colloquially called Sydney Town. And during the first half of the 1850s, there were a lot of fires in San Francisco. And often those fires were started by the Sydney Ducks. They'd start a fire when the wind was blown away from their area, and then loot buildings after they burned. And another large group was the French. There were more people. There were 30,000 French people in San Francisco in the 1850s and 60s. And a lot of that came from France had just had a revolution. The country was in really bad shape, and the gold rush was international news, and people came to, participate in it. But a lot of the French came from the government of France had what we called the lottery of the golden ingot, and they were, for 1 franc, you could buy a chance to win a 4,000 ounce chunk of gold, which would be worth millions of dollars today. And it was supposed to be they would raise enough money to send 5,000 deserving poor people to California. But what they did instead with the money is they went into the prisons. They rounded up their political opponents. They rounded up pimps and prostitutes, and they shipped them all to San Francisco. And as a result, they fit in very nicely, I have to say. There were also more French restaurants in San Francisco than any other city outside of France. So you have that, and there are certainly various other groups. They came from countries that had a history of mining. So Bolivia, Chile, places like that.
I seem to recall that the population of San Francisco went from 1,000 to 20,000 in just a couple of years. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, here's another reason why it attracted criminals. San Francisco was a rich town. They didn't really use paper money in San Francisco until almost the 20th century. It was done with gold. And so if you had to get out of town and you were a criminal, why not go to San Francisco? It was far away from police, and it was you could make a lot of money. So it was, and actually San Francisco has always been a place where you could restart your life. So yeah. Yes. So,
how did the city government grow? With this unbelievable population growth, was there much? Was there law enforcement? I seem to recall an ad hoc lynch mob to take care of some earlier guys that were before the Sydney Ducks. The
Hounds.
The Hounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. Well, actually, I should mention another criminal group came from New York City. As a New York City-born person, I'm taking no small amount of pride in this. It was a lot of the people from Tammany Hall, people who had been thugs, basically, and they realized that this is a good place to do business. Now, I'm sorry. What did you ask me?
Well, just about the evolution of city government.
Right.
In the criminal milieu.
In the beginning, there have always been schisms in the city. And first schism was between the Americans, the Americans and the Irish who came from New York. And it was partly religious. The Americans were Protestant and the Irish were Catholics. And there was a lot of lawlessness in the first few years. And this group called the Committee of the Vigilance Committee, opened up.
Yes. Yeah.
These were sort of established people, and they hung a number of Australian and Irish criminals, and they took over the town for a while. And the same thing happened in 1856, where a gambler killed a sheriff, and another sort of lynch mob came from that. So there was, underground, there was that kind of, it had been always. Now I think the other conflict is between the idea that San Francisco should be the Paris of America, and San Francisco should be a respectable place. And this is on.
San Francisco should be what?
A respectable place.
Oh yes, a respectable place.
Yes.
Well, that started happening in the 30s and 40s, right? I mean. Yeah. I think. Well, no, there was some of that before. There was certainly reform governments in the early 1900s, and the people who wanted vice in open city did refer to it as Paris of the West, and the other people wanted to clean it up. Right.
But in big, largely happened. Millions and millions of servicemen came through San Francisco during World War II. And when they came back at the end, a lot of them looked at the city and said, "Well, it's just beautiful. I think we could settle here." And a lot of them went back to Kansas or wherever, came back with their families, and they had a very different philosophy and view of what the city should be than the people who already lived there. And what they wanted was like Ohio and San Francisco. So there was a big crusade against vice. And Ed Brown, who was Jerry Brown's father, was the attorney general, and he sent up a number of. I'm sorry. Go ahead. We'll get there. Let's go back to say the early 1900s. I mean, gambling and prostitution, as far as I can tell, has always been huge in San Francisco. It absolutely has, and especially in Chinatown. And actually, if you were to go to there, you would see a lot of people in Portsmouth Square gambling. They're slapping chips down, but it is gambling, and it's very much ingrained. And the Tongs, who started as kind of fraternal organizations and turned largely into criminal organizations, had a lot of control of that gambling business. And just, it was an open town. It wasn't really till the late 1860s that a lot of people brought their families out and wanted to sort of change the tone of the city.
Okay. How did the organized crime evolve in the city? I know we get up to the 30s. There were like there were the McDonough brothers, but say around the 1900s, what was going on? Was there like a crime family or crime families?
Well, a lot of the, let's say, the mafia, which in San Francisco has been very small and long-lived. it was it came out of Prohibition. So there were a lot of killings of gang leaders, mostly in North Beach, during the 1920s, fighting for control of the liquor business. And it happened that the graveyard, the place where most of these people were killed, was not in North Beach. It was in the Sunset, which was a very thinly settled area at the time. And a number of very well-known gangsters were shot to death in the Sunset because there weren't many people around.
Mm-hmm.
So it continued. There was a mafia family. Let's stop just for a second because I can't remember anyone's name.
Lanza.
Oh yeah. Okay, there was an Italian family, the Lanzas, who controlled things. So they also had people in San Jose. But to give you an idea of, there were no big mafia people out here. And one of the reasons was Kevin Mullen wrote in a book called The Toughest Gang in Town. What he was saying was that the toughest gang in town were the police. And they wanted to keep the outsiders out. So the main way you could get to San Francisco up until the late 1930s was a ferry from Oakland. And every ferry that came in, they'd have a number of cops looking. And if they recognized this person, they'd just throw him out. In those days, there was a charge called, I have to come back to this one. It was basically, they could arrest you and say you were guilty of hanging around with bad intentions. And they did that a lot. Mm-hmm. So they sent people back so they could sort of control a lot of the crime. There was a lot of corruption in the police.
Yes. When do you think the McDonough? In the 30s, the McDonough brothers had a bail bonds company, and they were down at, I don't know, where were they? Bush and Kearny, I think. But they basically controlled the levers of power within San Francisco, and they worked together with the police in terms of, basically okaying, bordellos and gambling houses and stuff like that. And there's just a tremendous amount of graft happening. And do you know when did the McDonough brothers start operating? Irishmen, obviously. My guess is around 1911 or so. The other also thing to remember is that after the earthquake, there was a huge influx of criminals because all this insurance money was pouring into the city to rebuild it. About a third of the city had left because they had no place to live. And as a result, the city was much poorer. They had much less money, so they laid off 20% of the police. So again, you get a rich place with fewer cops. Why not go there? So that was also part of it that was going on. With the Lanzas, actually, I think it was Jimmy Lanza. That's just to show how busy they were. Jimmy Lanza lived to be 103. I don't think you saw centennials. I don't think you saw many mafia people who are over 100, if any. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, in researching what I'm doing, it's become apparent to me that San Francisco is just this unique and bizarre, not just in the crime world, but in just the characters that come to San Francisco.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best example would be Emperor Norton.
Yes.
San Francisco has always been very accepting of crazy people, of people who had who marched their own drummer. And one of them was Emperor Norton. He was from South Africa, and he came with about $40,000 that he got from his father. He's from a wealthy family. And he built that into about $200,000 in a few years. But then he had the opportunity he was sold to corner the rice market. San Francisco has always had a large Asian population, and the rice market was huge. And he was sold a number of 3 ships coming in to the city filled with rice. What he didn't know was that 2 days later, about 10 ships came in. So he paid a lot of money for this, and then the market got flooded. He sued the people who sold it to them. The suit went on for years. He lost, and he left the city. And he came back about 4 years later. He marched into the office of the editor of one of the leading papers and gave him a statement or a proclamation that proclaimed him Emperor Norton, the Emperor of the United States. And the editor had kind of a sense of humor, so he put it in. And it got a great response. And he was established. He was very well liked. At one point he was arrested by the police, and the outcry was so huge that the chief of police had to apologize to him, and the police saluted when he passed by from then on.
So in the 30s, the town was operating in a vice at full speed. The McDonough brothers were in charge, along with the police, and they coexisted with the Lanza crime family, which is kind of interesting in such a small geographic area. I mean, if the McDonoughs were in basically the financial district, and the Lanzas were up in Fisherman's Wharf. I mean, you can walk it. And did they just kind of separate? Was it just kind of divided up?
Well, it's been a natural process. The Irish came first, and then came the Italians. And whatever group comes to San Francisco first, they're usually poor, and there are usually a lot of criminals. And as the generations get Americanized, they become, police and teachers and all the rest of this stuff. So the Italians were in Fisherman's Wharf in North Beach, and the Irish were downtown. I think, well, first of all, the Italian mafia was never big in San Francisco, and partially that was due to the police. So it wasn't that big to begin with, and as a result, they didn't have large gangs, and a lot of people who became the mafia, really, as I mentioned, out of the 1920s, in bootlegging, really came, and then the winning family was basically the Lanzas.
Did Prohibition have any other impact on crime and vice in San Francisco?
Oh yeah, just like everywhere. Just like everywhere. There was a tremendous amount of speakeasies that sprang up, and a lot of drinking, illegal drinking, and also a lot of crime. There was actually, I can't think of the name of it right now, but there was a saloon in North Beach that years before had been known as the Billy Coat Saloon. It was named after the smell inside, which would be stale whiskey and various other things. But it became another place, and it was a place where Jack Dempsey and a number of fighters and gamblers hung out. And in the 1930s, they served alcohol. In the 1930s, or 20s, I'm sorry, they didn't change. The only difference was instead of selling alcohol in glasses, they sold it in coffee mugs. But it was pretty much the same thing. And Babyface Nelson was a big habitué in the 1930s.
So at the end of the 30s, the Atherton report happened. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of had a funny beginning. Some IRS official was making a speech, I believe it was to a women's group, and he was trying to be interesting. And he mentioned that some taxpayers were trying to claim their bribes as business expenses. And a reporter was there, and he made a big story out of that. It was a big stink, and the mayor was on the hot end of that. So he appointed to take the burden away from him. He appointed this guy, Atherton, who was an ex-FBI agent, to investigate. And Atherton did. And as a result of that, a lot of cops were transferred or fired. I think it destroyed McDonald's, and a lot of houses of prostitution, et cetera, were shut down. We also had, at the same time, Pat Brown closing down the most famous abortionist in the history of the city, and also a number of the more famous madams.
I thought Pat got more active in the 40s. Was he in the city in the 30s?
Excuse me, who was that?
I thought Pat Brown was more active in the 40s than the 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was. It was the 40s. So he was a DA of San Francisco. Then he became the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And then then he became the governor. So no, his stuff was after the war.
Yeah. So let's talk. I wanted to talk about the effect of World War II on San Francisco, because that's one area I know almost nothing about. What did the war do to crime and vice in San Francisco?
It increased the population. I mean, it was a hub. Soldiers and sailors coming through it. A huge amount of San Francisco were military bases. Fort Mason, that whole thing. A lot of the ships went from Fort Mason, and there was another. The Presidio was another large base. So it brought a lot more people in, and it also brought more criminals, but other groups. And there's an interesting. San Francisco was there at the beginning of the creation of jazz in this country. In the very beginning, New Orleans was the center of mafia activity. And a lot of Italians came out and were involved in various illegal activities. And I think also there was, it was mafia related Sicilian. And this has always been a strand of crime that never got real big, but always existed.
We had the shipyards too, which I don't know. That brought in a lot of people too, I would think.
Yeah, so. There's a whole part of the city that does not exist anymore by the bay, and it was a place that the Irish ran, pretty much Irish saloon keepers, and a lot of the people who stayed in their rooming houses, owed their jobs to these saloon keepers. So the saloon keepers had a lot of influence in the city politics, and were often involved in crimes.
We kind of skipped over the Barbary Coast. Anything you want? What era was that?
That would have been again the 1850s and 60s, and it grew. I mean, basically,
Oh, okay.
what happened was being a sailor was a terrible job in the 19th century. The pay was lousy, the food was bad, and the captain was like a dictator on the ship. So it was no surprise that when ships came to San Francisco, a lot of the sailors jumped ship. And the shipping companies who were losing so many sailors, they sort of said, if you guys don't do something about this, we may not come here anymore. So San Francisco, being an entrepreneurial city, came up with the idea of Shanghai. And what Shanghai means, it would be, they were sort of runners and crimps. It was, I don't say it was a game, but it was kind of. Basically, the idea was, for the runners, they were criminals who tried to either force or to entice people into certain saloons or boarding houses. And when they got in, I'll give you one example. It was Miss Piggott. She had a place in Barbary Coast near North Beach, and she had a runner who would bring people in, sit them at a specific bar seat, and she would give them a drink. It's a mixture of opium, whiskey, and some other things. And while the person was sort of reeling under the effects of this, she would pull out a bung starter. A bung starter is what you use to tap a keg of beer. It's like a wooden club. And she'd hit him over the head, and then she'd pull a lever, which would release the trap door upon which this guy was sitting. He would fall, hit a mattress, and they would row him out to ships in the harbor and sell him to the captains as crew members and get the first 2 months' wages. And that guy would wake up, on his way to Peru or Shanghai or somewhere else, and he was stuck. That was a big business for a number of years.
That's amazing. I've heard about that. I've never heard the details before. And it was basically Pacific Avenue, right? I mean, the nexus of the Barbary Coast was Pacific, correct?
Well, yeah. That means all the stuff was coming in and out. Yeah, and also since you have a lot of Chinese coming.
How did the Tongs coexist or with the other McDonough brothers and the police? I mean, were they totally separate entities?
Well, I think they were, connected by bribing police. That was always the political power. I don't think, the Tongs ran Chinatown, and the Italians more North Beach. I don't think that there was I'm not aware that there was a big conflict between the Tongs and the Italians. They both bribed cops. They did the same kind of things. They did it in different places. The Chinatown Squad, that was the first independent squad. In other words, it was assembled just for one part of the city. Mm-hmm. And there was so much bribery of the police. Before that, they decided to have, one group that was just dedicated to that. And they were in operation for almost 100 years, up until late 50s or early 60s.
So coming out, the Atherton report cleaned out a whole lot of police. I guess it was the end of Donna Fine, who was the preeminent madam of the city at the time. And then Sally Stanford kind of rose to prominence. And then Bones Remmer, who was running the Calneva Lodge up in Lake Tahoe, had Bones Corner and the Menlo Club in San Francisco, and he came to town at some point. And I think of it as the Bones Remmer era of crime, in which I guess he was tied to Lucky Luciano, way more connection to the East Coast mafia.
He did, and also to other gangsters. He started the Cal Neva Lodge. He also worked with bank robbers like Babyface Nelson and other people.
Yeah.
He actually used them to knock off some of his rivals, and they were able to stay in his place and not be noticed by the police.
Yes.
And they also came to San Francisco to hang out. But he was a Bones, the nicknames of the underworld are kind of interesting, and it's often the opposite of what the person is. So Bones Remmer, you would think of someone skinny. Bones Remmer was quite obese.
Yes.
And he ran actually the town of Emeryville for years. The mayor was an alcoholic who basically lived in the tavern that Remmer controlled, and he had accepted.
Yeah. Anyway, so Sally Stanford had her place at 1144 Pine, a bordello where Herb Caen claimed that the finer details of the creation of the oh God, I'm having a total senior moment. What is it? What's the world? The United Nations. Yeah, well, but I mean, it was prostitution happening at her place, but all the delegates from around the world who came to town to hammer at the United Nations went to her place afterwards in the evening and hammered out the fine details there.
Yes. You have to give her some credit for the establishment of the United Nations, since so much of the discussion of it happened in her place by delegates from various places in the world. She was an interesting character. She's very, very entrepreneurial, and she used to caddy golf when she was 7. She was from a very poor family. She got arrested when she was young and did a little spell, but then she came to the Bay Area and started running. First, it was alcohol. She started selling alcohol, and then she branched into prostitution. And she was very careful. The place at 1144 was impregnable, pretty much, to the police. By the time police could get, their way in, there's nothing that's actionable that they would see. And then later, when she was closed out, it was like, again, the late 40s, early 50s. She moved to Sausalito and opened a restaurant, very successful restaurant. And when the city council turned down her request for more lights outside, she became political and she ran, and she eventually became the mayor of Sausalito.
Yes. Yeah. I read her book, so she was. I know she blamed, the influx of people after the end of World War II, the Midwesterners, with their conservative values, as one of the main reasons she left town, because the pressure got too great.
Oh yeah, and Pat Brown couldn't get witnesses for a long time. She had been arrested somewhat, but she never was convicted of anything until just before she left. I don't think she ever served time, actually. But she was foresighted enough to see which way the wind was blowing. And, so she left with a boatload of cash so she could create that restaurant.
I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I actually interviewed her when I was in 6th grade and living in Sausalito, and my friend and I had started a little paper called the Sausalito Sun, and my dad suggested I call her and interview her. I had no idea, anything, but Unfortunately, we can't find it. I don't think it ever made it into our paper. So I can remember talking to her. My friend was on her Little League team. So when we had the opening day parade for the Little League, he got to ride in her convertible Cadillac. So yeah. So
now, did you know? I'm assuming at the time you knew very little of her background.
I was in sixth grade. I had no idea anything. Yeah. But I mean, my dad. I mean, I knew she was. I don't know what I knew. Again, it's been a long time.
There was something special about her, and she was famous.
Yes. I remember her being very friendly. That's basically all I remember. So anyway, basically. They went after, Pat Brown went after Bones and the associates. The 40s seem to have been very, very kind of the end of the party. I guess they put Bones away in 1953 for taxes.
Yeah.
And
he was very bitter about the whole thing, and he ended up selling used cars in his brother's car business.
Yes. Yeah. I actually found his grave in Oakland.
Oh, really?
It's unmarked. It's unmarked. There's a little up in the Mountain View Cemetery up at the top of Piedmont Avenue. Huge place. There's a little area up on some hill where a number of Remmers are buried, but you can see where there's two missing grave markers, and one would be Bones, and one would be his brother, I guess, who he sold cars for. And I took a picture of it. I drove back down to the main office, and I said, I understand this is his plot is this, is this where he should be? And they go, oh yeah. And I said, so it's not marked? And they said, no. And I said, he used to live in this huge mansion in the Claremont neighborhood. It's, and the woman looked at me and said, you'd be surprised. I guess it's not uncommon for very wealthy people to end up, because, I mean, this house is just huge. It's still there. So on Claremont Avenue Boulevard. Oh yeah. It's in the.
Let's check it out.
It's in the Claremont. Yeah. I can. If you ever want to come over here, I can show it to you. But
okay. So let's. I'm just going to say. So let's talk about Pat Brown, Edmund G. Pat Brown, for a minute, if you would.
Sure.
He was a district attorney in San Francisco, and.
Yeah. Pat Brown was a very ambitious politician. He took the road that a lot of politicians take. He was the DA of San Francisco, and he was DA during the time that a lot of after World War II, and a lot of people from the Midwest moved to San Francisco. A lot of veterans moved their families. And it became more of a middle-class place in the sense of many of the things that San Francisco was celebrated for, such as gambling, drugs, were let me put this another way.
Prostitution.
Yeah, many of San Francisco's famous activities, prostitution, gambling, drugs, were heavily frowned upon. And Pat Brown sort of took advantage of this to start a crusade. And in this number of years, he managed to not close down prostitution, but force Sally. Oh God, I have to wait. I'll have to do.
Sally Stanford.
I'll do another one. Yeah, one of the things he did a number of prosecutions. he forced Sally Stanford, who was a leading madam in town, to leave the city. He convicted the most famous, he convicted Inez Burns, who was kind of the San Francisco's unofficial abortionist, had been for 40 years. He finally convicted her. And it had been difficult before because she was protected by the police to some degree, and also the wealthy families used her also, and it was sort of seen as a kind of a necessary thing. But she was convicted, and all these wins went toward him becoming the Attorney General of the state, and then governor for 2 terms.
Was he the one who prosecuted? No, Bones. They got Bones Remmer on federal tax charges. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't think.
But he had. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. Remmer was caught on federal state charges, but the Pat Brown definitely. I think there were police raids on some of his places, also at the same time.
But he had worked with Bones Remmer at some point when...
Yeah, it's interesting. He did the legal work for Remmer's incorporation. I think this was done in the very early 1950s or late 1940s. So he did that.
It would have been the late 30s or early 40s.
Oh, you're right. It was it was much earlier, because I don't think he could have done it when he was the Attorney General.
Yeah,
would have been difficult.
And so Bones had the Menlo Club, and he had the Bones Corner, and he and Emeryville. You mentioned he ran Emeryville, and the mayor was a drunk who sat in the townhouse bar, saloon, restaurant all day. Jack Ruby worked at Bones or the Menlo Club, I think, or Bones Corner, I think.
Yes.
Before he went to Dallas. So.
Right, and I think.
I don't know what just happened there, but you totally broke up. So whatever you said.
Oh, okay. I said, the mob connections that Ruby had really came through Bones Remmer.
Ah. Okay. Well, I think we've covered all the ground. We're up to the early 50s here, Paul, and I want to thank you for having. What I was hoping to do is get sort of an overview of crime and vice in San Francisco over the decades. Do you want to talk about your upcoming book a little bit?
That's right.
You want to mention it?
Yeah. I have one book out, which is Notorious San Francisco: True Tales of Crime, Passion, and Murder. But I'm working on a book called Murder at the Movies, and it's really, if you've ever seen a movie that was based on a real event, when you get out of that movie, you often think, well, how much of that stuff is true? And that's what my new book will be about.
Is that going to be... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It'll be coming out sometime next year.
Now, is that San Francisco focused, or...
No, it's internationally focused. I have crimes from pretty much every continent except for Australia. And they're all, really quite unusual crimes. And I think people will be interested in.
Wow. Well, it sounds fascinating. I do want to get into, at some point, talk about some of the great noir movies that were set in San Francisco. And I'm sure that's something we can talk about. Okay. I'm going to say goodbye for now, and thanks again, Paul. I will be putting a link to your website and your book in the show notes.
Thank you.
And I encourage everybody to read Notorious San Francisco, and because it's a fascinating book, and I'm sure we will meet again here So thank you for
Okay.
being on The
Sure.
Secret History of Frisco, Paul.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk to you
So,
again soon. Okay.
yeah.
Bye.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, talking to Paul. As I mentioned in the beginning, The Secret History of Frisco is a listener-supported podcast. You can subscribe for free at patreon.com/Frisco, and you'll get notified anytime a new episode is published. In the future, bonus episodes such as this will be behind a subscription tier, and starting at $5 a month. And there will be other perks for subscribers. And I hope you will do that as well. But if you just want to be a free subscriber, I'm really happy if that happens. So no pressure here. Our website is www.thesecrethistoryoffrisco.com. You can find all the free episodes there, and also show notes, bibliographies, videos, and other cool stuff. It's definitely worth visiting. And until next time, I hope you can get a little crazy and call it Frisco.